Welcome everyone to the fourth and final day of the DWC 2022 virtual conference. My name is Ingrid Palmer, first Vice Chair of the Council of Canadians with Disabilities, award-winning speaker and best-selling author, and it's my pleasure to turn it over to my co-host, my co-MC, to introduce herself. Heather?
Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Walkus, and I'm honored to be the National Chair of the Council of Canadians with Disabilities, and I'm very honored to be here with all of you.
It has been such a pleasure for both of us to serve as your co-MCs for the Disability and Work in Canada 2022 virtual conference. Over these past 4 days, it's just been an incredible time. And today we're going to start, as usual, with an acknowledgement. And before as part of that, I want to share with you this quote from Chief Dan George. It reads, "May the stars carry away your sadness. May flowers fill your heart with beauty. May hope forever wipe your tears away, and may silence make you strong." The Disability and Work in Canada Conference acknowledges that the lands in which we are all joining from are located on traditional territories of many Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit nations. By holding space for intersectional voices, the conference seeks to move in community and power towards social justice. We come together once more to share, to listen, to learn, and to grow in community. And as we gather for the last time today, let us continue to nurture relationship and connections. I welcome you exactly as you are, accept exactly what you bring, and so let us begin.
Hi. The overall goal of the conference is to identify ways to help implement the Pan-Canadian Strategy for Disability and Work, which was developed in consultation with stakeholders and rights holders, persons with disabilities. As 2022 continues to be a challenging year for the employment of persons with disabilities, the DWC conference is focused on how to meet those challenges and continue to make progress on the implementation of the Pan-Canadian Strategy for Disability and Work. The theme for this year's conference is Disability, Inclusion, and Belonging in the Canadian Workplace. A special thank you to, and you're going to enjoy all these letters, CRWDP, IDEA, ONIWG, CCRW, Rick Hansen Foundation, CNIB, Inclusion Canada, and Realize for organizing this conference. Please visit the DWC initiative page on the conference website to know the names of the DWC Steering Committee members. On behalf of the DWC Steering Committee, we want to thank all the presenters for their time and expertise. Instead of a thank you gift, we are making a donation to a pot of funding that will support people with disabilities to attend the DWC in-person conference next year. Ingrid?
Thank you. Yesterday's theme was belonging in the workplace. And to summarize some of the highlights and themes that came up, it included cultural centering and improving cultural diversity was one of the themes. Also, the role of innovation in enhancing employment for persons with disabilities. Discussions around the intergenerational experience of belonging was a highlight, and folks also had a discussion around how they had to hide their disability in the past, but some folks are feeling like the dawn has risen on a time when they are better able to disclose their needs in the workplace. One-size-fits-all solutions, of course, was another topic that was discussed about how they don't work, and that it's not about accommodation, but the need for more universal design from the get-go. Proactively creating environments that foster belonging was another important theme. And there also emerged a sense of empowerment with the promotion of tech jobs for persons with disabilities by persons with disabilities. You know, the conference themes over the past 3 days, and including our theme today, have really invited me to dream of what will it look like when colonialist power is no longer poised in a way to exclude persons with disabilities from acquiring economic and social parity. And we are fully able to occupy our place and roles of power ourselves. Just thinking about it, it's just an incredible day that will be. Heather?
Yes, I feel the same. And one quote that comes to mind, another Indigenous man, which I'm sure his wife came up with this, but only Indigenous men were able to speak at that time, the 1800s. And that is Chief Seattle. And he said, let us put our minds together to see what kind of life we can make for our children, our children's children, and our children's children's children. And I think the work that's been done over the last 3 days and now going in to the 4th day, inclusive workplace strategy, is really going to push that forward, and the next generations are definitely going to benefit. Today, we have an exciting day ahead with a keynote presentation by Tim Rose, Senior Consultant, Accessibility at CIBC, followed by a set of 4 parallel sessions, and we will end off the conference with an important plenary on making progress on employment of persons with disabilities in the Canadian workplace, opportunities for collaboration between employers and unions. Following the plenary, we will be having an Indigenous Thanksgiving closing by Grandmother Roberta and our closing remarks and conference closing. There are also recorded vignettes to check out about the lived and living experience of persons with disabilities, and that's under the vignettes tab, and short pre-recorded presentations under the pre-recorded tab on the conference website, and we encourage you to take a look. For common tech questions about navigating the conference website, you will find by visiting the frequently asked questions page, and also the participants guide is located there. We are pleased to provide CART and ASL interpretation for all of the live conference sessions and French-English interpretation for all keynotes and many of the parallel sessions. Captioning is available by clicking on the Show Captions CC button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can also view the live captions by clicking on the stream text URL posted in the chat box, if you wish to view the captions on a separate screen. All pre-recorded presentations include captions for accessibility. The video of an ASL interpreter will be on your screen, as your video layout in Zoom will already display the ASL interpreter in side-by-side mode. You can adjust the size of the screen by the ASL interpreter by placing your cursor on the bar in between the 2 screens and dragging the bar to the side. Ingrid?
For all keynotes and one of each set of the parallel sessions, French to English interpretation is available. There will be a note in the program that says des interprètes français à anglais seront disponibles. French to English interpreters will be available. In Zoom, select the French language channel by clicking on the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen and select French. You can then hear the meeting audio translated into French by a live interpreter. pour tous les keynotes et un de chaque ensemble de sessions parallèles, une interprétation français à anglais est disponible. Il y aura une note dans le programme. Des interprètes français à anglais seront disponibles. French to English interpretation will be available. Dans Zoom, sélectionnez le canal de langue français en cliquant sur l'icône Interprétation au bas de votre écran. Puis sélectionnez Français. Vous pourrez alors entendre l'audio de la réunion traduite en français par un interprète en direct.
If navigating the website is not accessible to you, you can send us an email to receive an alternate agenda in Word with links to join the conference sessions at info@dwcstrategy.ca. Finally, we would like to request that you do not tweet about the DWC in order to stand in solidarity with the cross-disability intersectional community regarding current concerns over the management of Twitter. There is a chat box for technical support available at the bottom right corner of the website for those having trouble accessing the virtual sessions. Type your question in the Q&A box or the chat for anytime you want to ask a question. It will be monitored and moderated. You may also raise your hand in Zoom and the panelists will then unmute you and you can ask your question. Ingrid?
Thank you. As we mentioned, today's theme is inclusive workplace strategies. Please rejoin us after the parallel sessions for the plenary on making progress on employment of persons with disabilities in the Canadian workplace, opportunities for collaboration between employers and unions. As well, there will be an Indigenous Thanksgiving closing. There will be brief closing remarks from myself and Heather, followed by the official conference closing by Steve Manteith, one of the DWC Steering Committee members. At this time, right now, I'm handing over to Maureen Haan, and she's also one of the Steering Committee members for the Disability Work in Canada conference. And she's going to welcome our keynote speaker, Tim Rose. Over to you, Maureen.
Thank you so much, Ingrid and Heather. I look forward to hearing you again this afternoon to hear your reflections on today. So thank you so much for joining us and for leading us every day as you have done. And now I would like to ask Tim to put on your camera and open up your mic. Tim is our keynote today. And I'm just going to do a quick bio for Tim. Tim is a change maker and a business leader who was fortunate enough to be born with a significant physical disability. He was raised to push the envelope, and Tim has had the privilege of living, working, and studying on 3 continents, which has given him the opportunity to view disability through the lens of many cultures. Tim has been a proud member of CIBC since 2017, holding a variety of roles, including compliance, community investment, and now client experience, where he helps to lead the bank's Accessibility Center of Excellence. But more than any of that, I would like to invite my friend Tim Rose to give us his thoughts on disability, employment, and unlocking that power of disability in the new horizons. So welcome, Tim.
Thank you so much, Maureen, and thank you everyone for the invitation to speak at this amazing conference today with so many other amazing speakers. Bonjour tout le monde. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about my personal career journey. And that might seem a little self-indulgent to me, but I hope that through my career journey, you in the audience and my fellow esteemed panelists can learn some lessons about inclusion in the workplace that I think will serve us well as a community moving forward. So as Maureen mentioned in my bio, which was probably a little longer than it needed to be, sorry, Maureen, I was lucky enough to be born with significant physical disability, specifically cerebral palsy, spastic quadriplegia. And no, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to spell that. Now, some of you might be wondering how I could consider the fact that I can only move 2 fingers on my left hand, my head, and have full vocal range as being lucky. But the reality is that I see my disability as the #1 asset I bring to the table, not only in my work and in my day job and in my career, but also as a husband, as a partner, as a son, as a brother. My disability is a fundamental part of who I am. And it's a part that I'm very, very proud to celebrate. But truth be told, it wasn't always this way. And I didn't always view my disability as a true positive like I do now. And I think part of that speaks to my career journey. So I graduated from university with a master's degree in human rights law, which, much to my mother's chagrin, is the branch of law that makes absolutely no money whatsoever. But I graduated with a master's degree in human rights law, and I was quite confident that I was going to come home from England, where I did my master's degree at the University of Nottingham, and walk into a job or roll into a job immediately. And that simply did not happen. For the next roughly 4 years, I endured incredible discrimination in the workplace, getting denied interviews and not knowing where to turn, how to turn, who to turn to get a foothold in a career that I knew I could excel at. And I was forced into taking work that was not in my skill set because it was just what I could find. And I was also forced to live on ODSP, which for those outside of Ontario is the Ontario Disability Support Program. Now, I want to be clear that I recognize there are many people who all they can do is live on ODSP, and that program should be beefed up to support those individuals, but I was not one of them. I was highly educated, highly motivated to find work, and I just couldn't. And it was a very difficult and dark and challenging time for me. And if it hadn't been for the amazing support system of my wife and my parents and my friends and family, I don't know where I would be right now. And that's just being totally blunt with you in the audience. But I'll tell you when things started to switch for me. Things started to switch for me when I said to myself, okay, I'm not having any luck in the traditional way of finding work. I've applied to hundreds of roles, not getting called for interviews. When I do get called for interviews, I say, oh, by the way, I'm in a wheelchair just to make sure the interview location is accessible. And they get really quiet on the phone and hang up really quickly. And so I said to myself, okay, I know that my disability is an asset. I know that it makes me, by virtue of having a disability, I am a more creative person, I'm a more innovative person, and a more empathetic person. And those are all words that companies and corporations, they're all diversity buzzwords that they all love. And so I said, I'm going to put myself out there as promoting this idea of disability as an asset, or what I call my disability positive philosophy. And I started a consulting firm called Disability Positive Consulting. And the idea behind that was to help companies see and unlock the power that I know disability brings, and not just physical disabilities, but all disabilities bring to every single workplace. And so I was doing speaking engagements like I'm doing today. I was doing direct consulting with organizations. And it was through that work that my career really started to take off. First, in the disability employment arena, where my story seems to and continues to resonate with individuals, service providers, but also with the business community. And I had an opportunity to join the team at Magnet. For those that don't know, Magnet is a online employment platform, and I helped to build out their disability portfolio. And then from there, I had an opportunity to meet one of the senior executives at CIBC because they were a sponsor of Magnet. And we were in a meeting one day, and she looked at me and she said, "Tim, what would it take for you to come to this side of the table?" And my honest response was probably not much, which looking back, should I have said that in front of my then boss? Maybe not, but I did. And now I've been a proud member of Team CIBC for the last 5.5 years. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about CIBC specifically, because I think my career journey illustrates something a little more than that, which is that my disability is the #1 asset I bring to work every day. It is not something that needs to be accommodated for. It is something that is accelerating my career growth. And I'll share a few examples of how that is. But when I talk about those corporate buzzwords I mentioned earlier, creativity, adaptability, innovative approaches, those are all things that companies love. And those are all things that we as people with disabilities in our community have inherent within us, because we live in a world that is not designed for us. And so what I've been focused on in my career is promoting this idea that people with disabilities are not only worthy of employment, but we will accelerate a company's success by virtue of how we are approaching work, approaching various projects, whatever line of work we're in. And yes, I'm a radical socialist who ended up working at a bank, so go figure. But it's really important to remember that for me, my disability unlocked a huge career potential. And I'll share a few stories about that. So the first story I'll share was when I first joined the bank. I was a junior compliance officer, so I was kind of learning the ropes of compliance and how to make sure that the bank is following all the rules that it should be. And I came in one Monday morning and I had an email from the executive assistant of our CEO inviting me to lunch that day with an Economic Club of Canada event. Now, for those that have never worked in a corporation before, you never get emails from the CEO, particularly at a junior level. But what had happened was he had heard about my kind of approach to diversity and inclusion and my role at the bank and since joining, and he wanted to talk to me about the way that we as a bank could better prioritize both our clients and employees with disabilities, and invited me to this luncheon. So I quickly found someone to look after my service dog for the afternoon, and I scuttled off to go and attend this luncheon, and was able to have some great FaceTime with the CEO, which again, if you're familiar with kind of corporate circles, that very rarely happens. But the other story I'll share is that a lot of the work I do at CIBC is focused around making our clients' ambitions a reality, and that includes our clients with disabilities. We all know in this virtual room, I'm sure, that the disability community makes up anywhere between 22 and 30%, depending on what numbers you're looking at, of the general population. And so as a bank, we cannot afford to ignore 22 to 30% of our client base. It's just not a smart business. No one would ever say, yeah, take that third of your business and not focus on it. And so what I've been able to do is put a bit of a face and put some visibility on the much needed improvements we need to make as an organization around providing accessible service to our clients and employees with disabilities through my own story, right? So I love going into rooms with stuffy corporate executives, and I love all my colleagues, but some of them are stuffy. I love going into rooms and, you know, talking about what we can do to improve the client experience for clients with disabilities. And they'll often say to me, or I'll hear through the grapevine them saying, you know, but do people with disabilities really access this type of bank account or this credit card? And I'm able to kind of, because my disability being cerebral palsy is so visible, I'm able to kind of say to them, yeah, and I'm sitting right in front of you, right? And that visibility, making accessibility visible within an organization is the key, I believe, to unlocking the benefits of a truly inclusive workplace. I'm going to say that again because I think it's a really important point to hit here, which is the visibility of disability and accessibility is the key to unlocking what I see as a truly inclusive workplace. So it's not good enough to just say we have a policy that supports persons with disabilities, or we have that little statement at the bottom of all of our job postings that says we hire from a diverse group of candidates, right? People with disabilities have been getting that for years, and it's not good enough. And so how can we make a truly inclusive workplace? I think it is about making accessibility visible, but also making it relatable to those that maybe don't have disabilities or have never met anyone with a disability before. I've had a number of managers at the bank, and a couple of them have said to me, I've never had anyone with a disability, particularly a significant physical disability on my team before. So this is going to be a learning experience for both of us. And my response to that is always, great, let's learn together. And I always tell people, don't be afraid to ask questions. You cannot offend me. So making disability visible and accessible, not only externally, but internally within our teams is really, really important. But the other thing that's really, really important for me is making sure that we are recognizing and celebrating employees with disabilities within organizations so that they are able to climb the corporate ladder. And I wrote an article on LinkedIn a few years ago. Some of you may have seen it if anyone follows me on LinkedIn at Tim Rose. You may have seen an article that I wrote called "Let's Turn the Corporate Ladder into a Corporate Ramp." And it was an article talking about the fact that, you know, we talk about the corporate ladder as a metaphor, but is it really a metaphor? How many people with disabilities do you see, particularly visible disabilities, do you see in senior levels of Canada's top companies? Not many. And so how can we as an organization not only get people with disabilities in at the entry level of organizations, and I will say, to toot my bank's horn a little bit, CIBC has done a great job of that. We have partnerships with organizations like Line Connect and Specialist Erna to support our hiring of candidates with disabilities, but also leadership opportunities, right? And that is something that I think that to me is the next frontier of all of this, is how do we make sure that we get leaders with disabilities in the senior positions of these large organizations, because research has shown us that that is what will make the difference. When you have leaders that are committed and that understand the value of the disability marketplace, that is what is going to unlock true inclusive workplaces. So, I think as I sit here today with all these amazing panelists, and I know there's going to be parallel sessions this afternoon, I invite you all to think about this idea of unlocking the power of disability in organizations and how we can work together, both as individuals like myself who are working within large companies to change the culture, but also our community organization partners, some of whom I see with us here today, and individuals with disabilities, to say, this has gone on long enough. We need to change the conversation in modern corporate Canada away from accommodation and towards acceleration. And my disability has accelerated my career and my career trajectory. And I think that is and of course I'm going to, there we go. It's live on Zoom, everybody. And I think that is what truly makes disability and kind of the disability positive approach that I try to bring to work every single day, an important part of the next phase of companies like CIBC and our other peer banks and telecom companies to really manifest what an inclusive workplace actually is. Because it's not just a workplace that accommodates people with disabilities. That is obviously critically important, but it is a workplace that recognizes that disability is an accelerator to business objectives. And it is a market that cannot be ignored, should not be ignored. One stat that I love, just to paint a bit more of a picture around this, is that the disability market in Canada is roughly the size of the population of Vancouver and the Greater Toronto Area combined. And that is a large segment of Canada. And disability is a large segment of Canada. And I tell companies all the time, and I tell my own organization internally, we ignore people with disabilities at our own peril. And so I want to leave you with 3 lessons around developing, or 3 kind of tips on how we can promote an inclusive workplace. The first one is make disability as visible as you can within your organizations or within your work. So that could be putting up posters that celebrate different identities. It could be having sign language interpreters at your meetings, even if, or, especially in instances where when it's senior leaders talking and there's going to be a large audience there, right? So making accessibility accommodations visible, having large font on every one of your presentations, right? Us at banks, for anyone that's ever worked at a bank, you'll know that we love a good PowerPoint presentation, but we also love like tiny size 9 font that no one can read on the screen, because we love to jam as much information as possible. And so making accessibility visible in that regard is just cutting down the amount of information on the slide and making the font a lot bigger. And that seems really simple, but you'd be amazed at how many fights I've had within my organization to say, do we really need 900 words on a slide? No, because it's ableist and it's problematic. So that's number one, making accessibility visible. Number two is, don't be afraid in your organization to connect disability and innovation. And I know there was a presentation yesterday on innovation and kind of the role that it plays. And I've always said that disability is the spark of innovation. And I think that that is really important. And we need to keep talking about that. And if someone, the more we can kind of have that in the mainstream dialogue, the better this is going to be for everybody. So that's number two, is connecting and talking about innovation and disability more openly, and getting away from kind of previous eras of disability conversation in the workplace, which was, oh, it's such a burden to accommodate Tim, right? And now it's, oh, Tim's viewpoint is incredibly valued at my organization, and I know that. And the third tip or piece of advice I will leave with you is, I think, the most important one, which is that we need to hold large organizations and organizations with the resources to drive a culture of accessibility and kind of drive cultural change in the landscape of disability and work in Canada. And yes, I'm including my own organization in this. We need to hold those organizations to account. And we need to put pressure on large organizations to be the leaders that they should be in this space and be promoting accessibility and disability in a really innovative way on behalf of all the organizations that maybe don't have the resources that the large federally regulated enterprises do, things like banks, telecom companies, but also mining companies. These are all organizations that need to be at the forefront as we fight to change disability from a burden to an accelerator in business. So that is my story. I hope those lessons that I've left you with are valuable to you. And I'd just like to say, I know I'm ending a bit early, but I also know there could be questions. I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Maureen for inviting me to speak here today. It's always such an honor to be among my people, as I like to say, those of us that understand and care about these issues in a really genuine, authentic way. And I've been Tim Rose, and thank you so much.
So, Tim, all I know is it's quite quiet right now, but I know people are clapping. So thank you so much. We do have a few minutes. So if anybody's got any questions, I see that there are some in the Q&A already. I think that a lot of comments, really, Ellen is saying, thank you so much for sharing your story and experience. The question is, how do you make invisible disabilities visible?
That's a great question. And I think it comes down to the language that we use around disability, right? Because my disability, it's hard to hide. I roll into a room and you know that I have it. But I know that for many people with invisible disabilities, that constant conversation around disclosure is a really challenging one to have. Yep. So we as organizations need to make it visible in the words that we use and in the imagery that we're using, so that every photo of a person with a disability is not a stock photo of a guy in a wheelchair, because we are a very small segment of the disability community. And so making imagery that includes non-visible disabilities, and people say, Tim, isn't that just a picture of like a person? And I'm like, yes, that is a picture of a person, and that's okay, right? So making sure that we're including invisible disabilities in kind of that aspect of the visibility, but also when we're talking about disability, not forgetting the accommodations like low lighting, for example, that might not impact you on a physical disability level, but might impact you for those with non-visible disabilities. That is an accessibility win. And people with non-visible disabilities have just as much of an asset on their disability. If you look at something like anything on the neurodiversity, a lot of those individuals are really, really detailed focused. And what do banks love? People that are really, really, really detail focused. And so making, I hope that answers your question, but to me, it's about using language and imagery that includes non-visible disabilities.
Thank you. We have a bunch of people saying that they're clapping. Fantastic presentation, Mr. Rose. Thank you, and that you're an inspiring speaker. We do have another question, and we've got about 4 minutes left. Tim, can you expand how we can hold our big organizations accountable on real inclusion?
Absolutely. And I'll put my hand up here and full disclosure, my bank doesn't know I'm about to say this. So lest a CIBC lightning bolt come out of the sky in the next 30 seconds. But I think it's really important that, you know, banks and telcos, we ask them what their accessibility policies are and how they are including people with disabilities in their work. Because it's not enough to just have lip service. What are the numbers they're putting to it? What are the resources they're putting to it? And if they say, you know, we don't want to share that information, then there's your answer, right? Yeah. So, for example, we at CIBC put out something called the ESG report, or Environment, Sustainability, and Governance report every year. And I fought, and this year I succeeded, to have accessibility as a separate section in that report. Previously, it was lumped in with kind of the general inclusion and diversity section, but I wanted to make sure that our clients and team members knew this is a focus for our bank, certainly a focus for me. So yeah. And
Tim, can I ask you, did you do that intersectionally? So it wasn't disability, but it was also intersectional with the other groups?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, accessibility for all aspects of banking, right? So yeah, absolutely. It's important to remember, you know, and I'll end on this, and this is going to be, Maureen knows I like a good mic drop moment to end my presentation. I'll end on this. I know that I have incredible privilege in the role that I'm in, but I also know I feel more like a change maker working at the bank than I ever did working a decade in nonprofit. Because yes, there's more to push against, but there's also more to push with. And I think we as advocates in this space need to hold organizations like mine to account to say, how are you helping to change the conversation? And I know I'm doing my part, or trying to at least, but I'll end there.
Well, that's a good note to end on, Tim. I know that there are a few questions that have gone unanswered, but we'll leave them wanting more. And so thank you.
You can always ask me back, Maureen, anytime. You know that.
And you know I will. And so thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for being here, for sharing your story, for setting us up for our last day at Disability and Work in Canada. So Tim, I thank you. I'll let you go to your next meeting that you get to now jump off and jump onto. Thank you for spending your time with us.
Thank you so much, everyone, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
And to the attendees, we are now going to have a little vignette. We're going to have a little break of a vignette. And then following the vignette, we're going to take our about a 5-minute break. We're going to come back at 1:10 Eastern into your parallel sessions, whichever parallel session you've picked. And then after your parallel sessions, we are going to come back into plenary for a wrap up of the conference with another amazing keynote and then some reflection. So enjoy the vignette. I hope.
Hi, my name is Samantha, or as everybody likes to call me, Sam. I'm currently with the federal government, Canada Revenue Agency, in their IR/TPR department, which is internal referrals / taxpayer requests. My career journey started about 30 years ago in the administrative field. I was diagnosed with most of my disabilities later in life. So that journey got really tough. Companies I found were not very accommodating, not willing to accommodate. But I'm happy where I am now at CRA. They are so open, so friendly, so accepting, very accommodating. I no longer feel ashamed of having to ask for accommodations. They approach me, is there anything else we can do that might make something easier for you to do this? It's really been overwhelming to finally be treated like a human being again. And not being bullied for being me. Some of the accommodations, it's actually kind of funny. When I first started with CRA, they put me in a handwriting spot. One of my disabilities, I can't handwrite because I shake too much. So I spoke to them, to my managers, and they were able to, within a couple of days actually, I thought it was going to be a little bit longer, they got me into a new position, which is the one I'm in now. It's 100% digital. They've given me the ergonomic keyboard, which is a lot easier for me to manipulate. We're looking into a new mouse, but we're just waiting for the doctor to approve the recommendations and see where to go from there on that. They're allowing me to work from home, which decreases some of the, it alleviates some of my hurdles. And I just honestly feel very blessed that CRA has taken me on, and they're standing behind their word. They want their staff to succeed. Whether you have disabilities or not, they will work with you. And I'm honored. I'm really floored. I feel good. The accommodations that CRA is providing me, I'm now able to perform 100%. Granted, with disabilities, anybody with disabilities, there's you know, you're a little bit slower in some things. But with these accommodations and a lot of the hurdles I faced before now removed, I can do 100% of my work now, and not worry. I can't explain how overwhelming it feels to, like I said before, to be treated like a human being with respect. I firmly believe all companies, now's the time. Like, you've got to open up your eyes and your ears. You got to open up your doors and allow people with disabilities to come and join your workforce and not bully them. Like, yeah, we have disabilities, but it's not really disabilities. It's only disadvantages because you put the disadvantage in place by not allowing it. If you allow accommodations, you're going to have an amazing employee. We want to work. We're dedicated. And some of us would blow you away with what we can accomplish.